I should have left the moment I found the first marker. If I had, I probably wouldn't still be waking up in the middle of the night whenever I hear someone whistle. Even now, 2 years later, I can't walk through a forest without checking over my shoulder, because sometimes I still feel like he's following me. It started after my grandfather died. He left me a small hunting cabin deep inside Black Hollow National Forest. The place wasn't worth much. Just an old wooden shack surrounded by miles of pine trees. No electricity. No neighbors. No cell service. The nearest town was almost 40 minutes away. Most people would have sold it. I couldn't. My grandfather spent half his life there. Some of my favorite childhood memories happened in those woods. Fishing in the creek, building campfires, listening to stories while rain tapped against the roof. So when the paperwork was finally settled, I decided to spend a week there. Just me. 1 week alone. A chance to clear my head. A chance to remember him. At least that's what I told myself. The truth? I was exhausted. Work had been crushing me. My apartment felt like a prison. I wanted silence. Real silence. The kind you only find deep in the wilderness. The drive took most of the day. The further I traveled, the fewer cars I saw. Eventually the paved roads disappeared. Then the gravel roads disappeared. Finally I reached the narrow dirt trail leading to the property. The cabin looked exactly as I remembered. Weathered wood. Rusted metal roof. Small front porch. The surrounding forest seemed thicker than before. Darker somehow, as if the trees had slowly moved closer over the years. Several old signs hung from posts around the property. No trespassing. Private land. Keep out. My grandfather had installed them decades ago. I unloaded my truck, started a fire, cooked dinner. Everything felt normal. Peaceful. For the first time in months, I could actually hear myself think. That night I slept better than I had in years. The next morning was cold. The kind of cold that settles into your bones. A thin layer of fog drifted through the trees. The forest was silent except for distant birds. After breakfast I decided to walk to the creek. The trail wasn't long, maybe 15 minutes. I had walked it countless times as a kid. The path wound through dense pines before descending toward the water. Halfway there I stopped. Something felt wrong. At first I couldn't figure out why. Then I saw it. 3 flat stones, carefully balanced on top of each other. Right in the center of the trail. I stared at them. The arrangement looked deliberate, almost artistic. The bottom stone was large. The second stone sat perfectly centered. The third balanced on top like a narrow triangle. Not something nature created. Someone made it. I looked around. Nothing. Just trees. Silence. Maybe another hiker had wandered through. Maybe some teenager thought it looked cool. Still, something about it bothered me. The marker stood exactly where anyone walking toward the cabin would notice it. I considered knocking it over. Instead I kept walking. The creek looked beautiful. Cold water rushed over dark stones. Sunlight reflected across the surface. For a while I forgot about the marker. until I started heading back. The rock stack was still there, standing perfectly upright, waiting, for some reason that unsettled me more than it should have. I returned to the cabin, spent the afternoon repairing loose boards on the porch. By evening I had almost forgotten about it. Then I remembered I had left my fishing gear near the creek. The sun was beginning to set. Orange light filtered through the trees. I followed the trail again. When I reached the marker, I stopped. My stomach tightened. The rocks were gone. Not moved. Destroyed. Pieces lay scattered across the trail. One stone sat nearly 10 feet away. Another had been smashed against a tree. It looked violent, deliberate. I stood there for several seconds, trying to make sense of it. Someone had built the stack. Then someone had come back and destroyed it. Or the same person had returned. My eyes drifted toward the forest. For the first time that day, I felt watched. The sensation arrived suddenly, like ice water running down my spine. I couldn't see anyone, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that someone stood among the trees, looking directly at me. I grabbed my fishing gear and headed back, faster than before. That night the forest seemed different, darker. The sounds felt sharper. Every crack of a branch made me glance toward the windows. Every gust of wind made me pause. Around midnight I finally laughed at myself. I was acting ridiculous. It was just a pile of rocks. Nothing more. Eventually I went to bed. I don't know how long I slept. Maybe 2 hours. Maybe 3. Then something woke me. A sound. Soft. Slow. Crunch. 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 I opened my eyes. The room was completely dark. For several seconds I listened. Nothing. Silence. Then it came again. Crunch. 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 Footsteps. Outside. I sat up immediately. The sound continued. Slow. Measured. Circling the cabin. Not running. Not sneaking. Walking. As if whoever it was wanted me to hear them. My heart started pounding. I slipped out of bed and moved toward the window. Carefully. Quietly. The footsteps stopped. Instantly. The silence felt wrong. Heavy. Like the entire forest was holding its breath. I pulled the curtain aside. Nothing. The porch stood empty. Moonlight illuminated the dirt yard. No movement. No figure. No animal. Just darkness. I stayed awake another hour. Then exhaustion finally won. The next morning I woke feeling stupid, half convinced I had imagined everything. The sky was gray and overcast. A cold wind moved through the trees. I made coffee, stepped onto the porch, and froze. Someone was standing at the tree line, watching me. The figure stood maybe 80 yards away. Tall. Very tall. Too far to identify clearly, but definitely human. They weren't moving, not even slightly, just standing there, facing the cabin, facing me. I stared for several seconds, trying to process what I was seeing. Then I shouted, "Hey!" No response. The figure remained motionless. "You're on private property." Still nothing. The wind blew through the trees, The figure didn't move. My pulse quickened. I took several steps forward. "Who are you?" That's when it happened. The figure slowly stepped backward. Once, twice, then disappeared into the trees, not turning around, not running, just backing away, like they had been expecting me to notice them. Within seconds they were gone. The forest swallowed them completely. I stood there alone, listening to the wind, trying to convince myself everything was fine. But deep down, I already knew something was very wrong. And I had no idea that before the day ended, I would discover the markers weren't random at all. They were a message, and they were meant for me. I wish I could tell you I packed my things and left right then. I didn't. That was my mistake. A huge mistake. At the time, I kept finding explanations. Maybe it was a hunter. Maybe someone got lost. Maybe some homeless guy had wandered onto the property. Nothing dangerous. Nothing worth panicking over. At least that's what I kept telling myself. The problem was, the evidence kept getting stranger. Around noon I decided to inspect the property. I grabbed my grandfather's old rifle. Not because I thought I needed it, because it made me feel better. The woods were quiet. Too quiet. The overcast sky seemed to absorb sound. Even the birds were gone. I walked the perimeter trail that circled the cabin. About 20 minutes in, I noticed something attached to a tree. A small wooden stake, maybe 10 inches long, driven into the ground. At first I thought it marked a property line. Then I noticed the symbol carved into it. 3 vertical lines, crossed by a single slash. Fresh cuts. Fresh wood. Someone had made it recently. My stomach tightened. I looked around. Nothing. Just trees. I pulled the stake out and tossed it into the bushes. Then continued walking. Less than 50 yards later, I found another one. Same size. Same fresh wood. Different symbol. A circle. Inside the circle was an X. I stared at it. A cold feeling crept into my chest. Someone was placing these things deliberately. And they weren't old. The wood was bright and clean. No weather damage. No moss. No age. Someone had been here recently. Very recently. I spent another hour searching. By the time I returned to the cabin, I had found 7 markers. All different. All positioned along routes I had walked since arriving. That was the detail I couldn't ignore. None appeared in random places. Every marker sat near paths I had personally used. The trail to the creek. The road to the cabin. The edge of the clearing. The route to the woodshed. Almost like somebody was documenting my movements. Tracking them. Mapping them. That realization stayed with me all afternoon. By sunset I was officially uncomfortable. The feeling of being watched had become constant. Every time I turned around, I expected to see someone standing behind me. Every shadow looked suspicious. Every tree seemed to hide a face. As darkness approached, I made my decision. I was leaving. I didn't care if I looked paranoid. I didn't care if the explanation turned out to be innocent. The place no longer felt safe. I packed my gear, loaded the truck, locked the cabin, then climbed into the driver's seat. Relief washed over me. In 10 minutes I'd be on the road. An hour later I'd be home. I inserted the key. Turned it. Nothing. The engine didn't even try. I frowned. Turned the key again. Silence. A bad feeling settled into my stomach. I stepped outside. The evening air felt colder than before. The hood looked strange. Slightly raised. Barely noticeable. But definitely not closed all the way. I walked forward. Lifted it. And froze. Several wires hung loose near the battery. Cleanly cut. Not damaged. Not broken. Cut. My entire body went cold. Someone had opened my truck. Someone had sabotaged it. Someone didn't want me leaving. For several seconds I couldn't move. Couldn't think. Then a sound drifted through the trees. A whistle. Long, slow, slow. Not a tune. Not a song. Just a single haunting note. The sound echoed from somewhere beyond the tree line. My heart nearly stopped. I turned toward the woods. Nothing visible. The whistle came again. Closer. A little louder. The hairs on my arms stood up. Every survival instinct I had started screaming. Run. Run now. I grabbed my backpack and sprinted. Not toward the forest road. Toward the cabin. The whistle followed. Slow. Patient. Almost playful. As if whoever was making it knew exactly what I had discovered. I reached the porch. Burst through the door. Locked it. Then locked it again. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the keys. The cabin suddenly felt much smaller. The walls thinner. The windows weaker. Outside, darkness swallowed the forest. I closed every curtain. Checked every lock. Then dragged furniture against the door. The heavy dining table. A bookshelf. Anything I could move. I kept expecting to hear footsteps. Instead there was silence. Hours passed. Nothing happened. The silence somehow felt worse, because it gave my imagination room to work. Every shadow became a threat. Every creak sounded deliberate. At around 11 p.m. I heard something outside. A soft scrape. Then another. The sound came from the front porch. Slow. Methodical. Like something dragging across wood. I held my breath. The noise continued for nearly a minute. Then stopped. I waited. Listening. Nothing. Another hour passed. Then came the scratching. A long scrape against the front door. My stomach dropped. It started again. Slowly. Like fingernails moving across rough wood. Scratch. 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 The sound wasn't aggressive. That made it worse. It felt patient. Intentional. Almost curious, as though someone stood inches from the door, testing it, learning it. The scratching continued for several minutes. Then silence returned. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, another sound appeared. A knock, a scrape, a distant whistle. At some point after midnight, I made the mistake of looking outside. Just one quick glance through a gap in the curtain. I immediately wished I hadn't. A figure stood near the edge of the clearing, motionless, watching, too far away to identify, too close to ignore. I couldn't see their face, only the outline, tall, thin, perfectly still. The figure remained there for nearly 20 minutes, never moving, never leaving, just watching the cabin, watching me. Eventually I pulled the curtain shut. I spent the rest of the night sitting in a chair with the rifle across my lap, waiting for sunrise, waiting for the nightmare to end. The first gray light appeared around 6 a.m. The woods slowly emerged from darkness, and with daylight came enough courage to move again. The figure was gone. The clearing was empty. The forest looked normal, almost peaceful. Almost. I grabbed the truck's emergency satellite beacon from my gear. Thankfully it still worked. After several attempts, I finally reached local authorities. The deputy arrived just after noon. A middle-aged man named Ross. He listened carefully as I explained everything. The markers, the figure, the truck, the whistling, the scratching. To his credit, he didn't laugh, didn't dismiss me. Instead, he nodded, then asked a question. "Show me where you found the markers." For the next hour we searched the woods. Most of the markers had disappeared. Every single one. As if someone had collected them during the night. That alone was unsettling. Then we found something else. About 200 yards behind the cabin, hidden between thick pines. A campsite. Fresh. Recently occupied. My stomach twisted. A blue tarp stretched between trees. Empty food containers littered the ground. Blankets. Clothing. Bottles of water. A fire pit containing warm ashes. Warm. Meaning someone had been there recently. Very recently. The deputy crouched beside the ashes. Touched them. Then looked at me. "Whoever was here left this morning." A chill spread through my body. Morning. While I was still inside the cabin. While I thought I was finally safe. Then Deputy Ross found something else. A notebook. Partially hidden beneath a blanket. The pages contained crude maps. Drawings. Notes. Most of them made little sense. Until we reached the final pages. The final pages showed my property. My cabin. My truck. My trail to the creek. My woodshed. My porch. My windows. Dozens of sketches. Dozens of observations. Someone had been studying me, recording me, following me, long before I realized it. I left that afternoon. The truck had to be towed. I sold the property 6 months later. I never returned. And honestly, I thought the story ended there. I was wrong. 3 weeks after leaving the cabin, I arrived home from work. There was a small wooden stake leaning against my apartment door. Freshly carved. Freshly cut. The same symbol from the forest. A circle. With an X inside. No note. No explanation. Nothing. Just the marker. Waiting for me. As if someone wanted me to know one thing. The woods were gone. The cabin was gone. but they still knew where I lived, and sometimes late at night, when the city is quiet, I still hear a faint whistle outside my window, slow, patient, waiting.